Today is 7th of March, 2019. My name is Claudia James and I'm conducting an interview on behalf of Norfolk Polish Heritage Group. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Tessa Black, known as Tessa.
Can you tell us how you come to live in Norfolk?
We moved to Norfolk in 1981 with our 3 children when our youngest was 6 months old. We came here because of my husband's work and we settled in Swaffham and we've been very happy here for the past 38 years.
Well, that's wonderful news, but could you tell me what were you doing before you arrived to Norfolk and how come you have ended up in England being a Polish lady?
Oh, yes. Well, I was born in 1947 in Horsham in Sussex. Both my parents were Polish. My father was Stefan Sajdak, born in 1913. My mother's maiden name was Nietzsche. She was Stefania Nietzsche. She was born in 1914. My parents came here after the war because they found it impossible to return to Poland under Stalin, where there were reports of repression against any ex-combatants. Anybody who wore army uniform was regarded as an enemy by Stalin, and people were being arrested when they returned to Poland, tortured, imprisoned, executed. And so my parents came here and they stayed here, though they didn't want to stay here. They hoped that everything would change, conditions would change, and they would be able to return to Poland one day. But unfortunately that never happened, not in their lifetime.
Could you tell me how it happened that your parents arrived in England in the first place? Your father, for example.
Right, my father was born in Krakow in 1913, and after finishing his secondary education, he undertook military training at Grudziądz and was attached to the 17th Cavalry Regiment of Wielkopolska under the name of Bolesław Chrobry in Leszno as a second lieutenant, and he was a reserve officer. After completing his law degree at Poznań University in 1936, he took up a post in a mining office in Katowice in Śląsk, and he lived in Siemianowice with my mother, and he was attached to the 3rd Cavalry Regiment of the Tarnowskie Góry, still as reserve officer, second lieutenant. In 1938, he married my mother, Stefania Nietzsche, who was born in 1914. And in 1939, World War II erupted, and my father's cavalry regiment was sent to defend sites near Rzeszów at a battle at Tarnogród, which took place, I think, in September 1939, where he was taken prisoner. And from then on, he was sent to a prisoner of war camp in Murnau in Bavaria. It was Oflag 7A. And while he was there, him and several of his comrades, fellow officers, had a hidden radio, which they managed to contact the outside, and they ran it as a covert intelligence operation. Towards the end of the war, in 1945, the prisoner of war camp was liberated by the Americans, and my father, together with 6 other officers, took leave from the army to care for 2,000 Polish refugees at a place in Germany called Gesslingen. And it was a camp that was run by UNRWA, which is the United Nations Refugee Relief Association, until the camp was terminated. Meanwhile, my mother escaped from Poland and managed to join him. And she worked for some time at the same camp in Germany as a pharmacist, so she was able to assist and do useful work there. In 1946, my grandfather was officially incorporated into the Second Corps under the leadership of General Anders, in spite of the fact that he'd been serving as an officer at Gesslingen.
Can I here interrupt? You meant to say your father, no, your not grandfather.
Oh yes, I did.
Yeah, it is your father who was working with Anders.
Yes, it was my father who was working with Anders. So in 1946, in December 1946, they found themselves in England just before Christmas, and they were in a camp, at Slinfold Camp near Horsham, which is where I was born, and that's how they came to be here.
Where did they settle down?
Well, my father, first of all, he had to find work. He didn't speak English, so he worked on a pig farm, and that came with accommodation. So, again, my parents had somewhere to live. And then he moved to another farm and worked near Salisbury. And then eventually they came to London, and they stayed with a friend, so they had a roof over their heads. And my father worked in an ice cream factory for some time in Acton, at the Walls Ice Cream Factory.
What about your mother? What did she do?
Yes, the very first year that she was here, even before I was born in 1947, she legalised her Polish degree, and so she was able to work as a pharmacist. So from about 1952 to 1962, she ran a Polish pharmacy in Belgravia in London, and it was the property of the Relief Society for Poles. And my father worked there. He was responsible for dispatching parcels of medicine to Poland, and my mother worked as a pharmacist. The pharmacy was also used as a drop box by agents working for Western intelligence during the Cold War, some of whom were actually captured and received severe sentences.
Can you tell me now about yourself? Did you help out in the pharmacy with your mother? Can you recall any days, any funny anecdotes in the pharmacy?
I spent a lot of time in the pharmacy, obviously. The hours of work were very long because my mother was the manageress. She had to work 6 days a week, and she worked from 9 till 7 every day. And so obviously I spent a lot of time there. I used to sometimes help counting the pills, and a lot of the time I've spent going round the corner to the little cinema and watching cartoons, which was a great treat. But later on, when I was older, on a Saturday, of course I was at school, and then on a Saturday I used to go to Polish Saturday school, which was near where we lived, and that's where I learnt Polish and met a lot of other Polish children, went to school with a lot of Polish children. When I started school, I was the only Polish child there who could speak English. There were quite a few other Polish children, but they couldn't speak a word of English. But it didn't take them long to learn to speak English. Children learn very quickly, soak up everything like sponges. And so I still have a lot of good friends from my primary school and from my days at Polish school.
So what did you study, and how come you arrived to Norfolk?
Right. Yes, I did science A-levels, and then I did a science degree based on botany, zoology and chemistry, and then I did postgraduate teaching diploma at Leicester University, and then I started teaching. That was in 1970, and I've taught for about 37 years because I retired in 2007, so I think that makes it about 37 years of teaching in different places, moving around a lot with my husband's job, but eventually settling in Swaffham, where I managed to teach for 25 years at the Convent of the Sacred Heart. So that was long, happy times, and very settled for us after a lot of moving around before that. And we're very happy in Norfolk, and we're glad to be here and want to stay here.
Well, thank you very much, Tessa. That was wonderful.
Just did it stop?